being welcomed. Karan.
Good evening, one and all. My paper deals with how these religious issues oppress the rights like fundamental rights like freedom of speech. So this is happening in India quite regularly, particularly with when it matters artistic creation, whether it may be N.F. Hussain or Taslima Nazreen or even for Kamal Hassan for creating a movie like Vishwarup. Okay, I'll begin my paper with a statement by Voltaire, a French writer. He says, "Je ne suis absolument pas d'accord avec vos pédis mas je ne bataille pour qui vos businessless expert," which means I may not agree with the word that you say, but I will defend to death your right to say it. This above statement by Voltaire seems quite appropriate to the kind of life Taslima Nazreen is leading. We, the South Asian nations, may probably call ourselves as democratic, but liberal we are certainly not. We may disagree with what the others say and even object to it, but we do not have the right to forcefully shut their mouths. We certainly do not have the right to diminish the fundamental right like freedom of expression. Taslima Nazreen issue is no different from Ahmad Hussain, Salman Rushdie or Arundhati Roy. It is important to understand that the literature cannot evolve if one oppresses such a fundamental right. A true admirer of art or literature is brought out will either accept or ignore it. But one cannot go on to the extent of banning a literary work of art. So coming to the first paragraph, we all know that we are living in South Asia. South Asia has many religions, and you can call it as a melting pot. And it has given birth to many religions like including Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism. Okay? And a issue like religion is too sensitive here. And particularly in such a scenario, criticism of God or religion often provokes violence or intolerance. There are groups of people always awaiting to catch hold of such a situation and create some problem or the other. The government agencies, instead of enforcing the law, have been trying to appease these groups who rather behave unlawfully. It is truly the moral defeat of the state. It reveals how and why liberalism and individual rights have always been antithetical to the mindset of those who are controlling the state. Taslima Nazreen, who has been the target of Islamists for being an advocate of human rights in Islam and also for being critical about the treatment of women under Islam, is the subject of my discussion. My paper revolves around how Taslima as a writer has been marginalized, not only by the government agencies or modern day feminists, but even by our literary circles. She has been misquoted or misrepresented by literary critics. Here in this paper, I want to discuss in the essence that Taslima's liberal outlook of presenting gender, race, land, community and religion that tends towards our individual perception of understanding the humanity. According to Taslima, religion only brings discord, division and death. Religion also brings solitude. Speaking on religion, she states that we have erected a wall within us, a strong hard wall in the name of religion, and cast, nurtured and poisoned the poison tree of hatred and intolerance. Taslima always believes it is religion which has been supporting patriarchal system. Religion from the start has been male-dominated. The custodians and followers of patriarchal system cannot possibly tolerate anything against religious personages or books. A strong wall has been built between us, a wall of religion which is unbreakable with separate humans. So as a writer, Taslima is viewed as one who stands as a symbol of resistance against Islamic fanatics, male oppression of human rights, and someone who always fights for the right like freedom of expression. It is indeed the double standards of religious establishments the world over, which instead of placing their faith in their respective doctrines, rather than in the sanctions of the criminal law, are united in demanding a legal protection and immunity for all the religions from criticism. In a democratic setup like India and Bangladesh, there has been an increasing realization that the legal mechanisms are inappropriate in dealing with matters like religion and faith. I repeat, in a democratic setup like India and Bangladesh, there has been an increasing realization that the legal mechanisms are inappropriate in dealing with matters like religion and faith. It is to be noted that criticism, however strong, does not curtail the religious rights of others. In a democratic pluralist society, any religious group can demand for its right to practice its religion and respect for its doctrine. But the fact is that it curtails the fundamental right like freedom of expression from others. It is indeed the mockery of system that in a democratic country like India, the hate mongers who foment violence among the religious communities do go unpunished, while the writers like Taslima, with her novels like Lajja and Revenge, artists like Ahmed Hussain painting a new picture of Indian Hindu goddess, and filmmaker like Kamala Hassan for acting and directing a movie like Vishwarupi, have all made critical references of religion and are often harassed through the criminal cases. Taslima Nasrin, being a crusader of human rights, states that the society is dominated by religion. Women cannot live with the rights of a human being. When religion dominates, patriarchy also dictates terms. Where religion and patriarchy are held in high esteem, women turn into slaves or sexual commodities or machines for producing children. And the path of women is driven with the list of 100,000 prohibitions. The women have to go forward. Their most important duty is to check all these prohibitions in the rubbish heap. The millstone of patriarchy, religion, and the thousands of prejudices still hangs heavily around our neck. Social reforms are argued for education and even self-reliance of girls. But has that made any changes? No, not at all. The country that guarantees human rights to some and denies to some other cannot be flaunted as democratic. Religion based on courts or anathema to democratic settled, and also for human rights and privileges of women. A nation cannot call itself secular and not criminal until it abolishes the severe violations of rights to women on the banner of religion. For the security and unity of the country, it is imperative to introduce secular education by dumping religious duty edicts. It is imperative to replace religious laws by a common civil code, but the problem lies within the system of the government. Instead of upholding and safeguarding such basic rights, it has developed a trend of pacifism. The result of which will be, in distant future, time will come when even a grown of a child will be condemned by some or the other group. All this should be stopped to uphold what? The constitutional rights. Taslima feels almost all the religions in the world are not liberal on women's rights, and it is time to overlook and amend such religious practices which have chained women from actual freedom. In an interview to the Statesman, she suggests that I hold the Quran, the Vedas, the Bible, and all such relevant texts determining the lives of their followers as out of place and time. We have to move beyond these ancient texts if we want to progress. Let humanism be our faith, new faith. So Taslima feels the religious books, the Holy Quran or Vedas or whatever it is, they are all out of date, out of time. So it is time to review those religious books. Okay, they are not for this new 21st century world. The Taslima narration, because she feels humanism should always prevail. Again, she fights for humanism. She is against those qualities which are again anti-humanistic values, which consist anti-human values. The Taslima narration has raised the serious questions about artistic freedom, fundamental rights of belief, freedom of expression, and the state duty to protect writers from those who challenge them. A serious reader of literature would certainly feel that Taslima has every right to defend her rights. Banning her literary works like Lajja or Bhikhandito, Splitting Two, is not the solution. But the governments and some of the right religious outfits have gone to the extent of banishing her, which is again a violation of fundamental rights like right to live, which is nothing but contempt of right to freedom, free of expression, in particular artistic freedom. It is certainly an interest for the creative work of art, for board experimentation, and it will certainly have an impact on rational inquiry. To conclude, I feel that people have misinterpreted, misquoted, or misunderstood Taslima's literature. She never says anything against Quran or any Islamic text. She just speaks against the clergymen, the people, the mullahs, who have translated, who have made changes, who have made some reformations, changes in the Holy Book. And to sum up, it seems that the state has yielded to the pressure and has granted the religious fanatics the right to vandalize works of art and criminally assault writers. In any case, these groups have no right to assert women's rights and are not permitted to decide what is permissible and what is impermissible. They simply do not have any business to dictate uniform codes or norms, whether it may be in respect of sexual preference, dress, religious practices, or social behavior. Societies which are captive with rigid religious laws cannot flourish or cannot think of progress. They can greatly enrich themselves only by respecting the difference, by celebrating the diversity and allowing others to express freely, listen to what they have got to say. To sum up, let us live into the individual freedom, as every citizen has the right to know and think what is good and what is bad. Thank you.
Next participant, may I please call upon Anamitra Chatterjee to make a presentation on the theme of Untouchable and Lagan as part of South Asian literature and culture. Ms. Anamitra Chatterjee, please.
Good evening to all. I would like to once again extend a very warm good evening to distinguished members present on the dais and esteemed members present as the audience for the day. Now, as it has already been said, my paper does not deal with the concept of diaspora. It does not deal with, it deals rather with a different kind of concept, and I focus on the concept of untouchability as presented through Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable and Lagan as constituting part of South Asian literature and culture. Now, I have done 2 slides, and as you can see that at first I would like to focus upon Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable. This is actually a picture that I got from Tamasha's stage presentation of Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable. And the cornered way that Baka has been presented speaks a lot. And he is someone who is literally has his back against the wall, and he is carrying the trademark symbol of his profession, which is the broomstick, wherein he actually aspires to hold the hockey stick, which is again to him the symbol of being someone who is British, someone who is much superior than his class, but he is ultimately fated to hold on to the broomstick. Simultaneously, let us move on to the presentation or the thematic representation of Lagan. Again, you have, as you can see, the outcast figure of Kachra. The name is significant enough. Is standing on the margins. He is not part of the group. And obviously, it goes without saying, the hero of the film, Bhuvan, has a superimposed presentation throughout the film. So he is presented as someone who is the only civilized man who can actually communicate with the Britishers, who are the civilized masters. Okay, now moving on. I now directly move on to my written material, and that is Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable compels the reader to engage with some basic questions, such as how is the nation to be imagined at a critical juncture of history where Indians were fighting for freedom from the colonial stranglehold. The next point is, on whose behalf is the new nation being imagined? Because as you will find that in both cases, especially in Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable, the protagonist, that is Baka, is doubly colonized. He is both a colonial subject, as well he is an alien within the mainstream society. He does not fit anywhere. He is a marginalized character. Okay, next. Does this demand for independence and equality, the protest against British racism, which renders any person of color as untouchable, within quotes, have any relevance in a country wherein a large number of people are segregated and alienated from the mainstream of social life because of the accident of their birth? And it is precisely against this stereotype discrimination and illogical segregation of humanity on the basis of caste that Mulk Raj Anand verbalizes his protest through his novels. As a committed artist, Anand feels duty-bound to express the unpalatable aspects of the ritual-obsessed Indian social life, especially from the perspective of those at the receiving end. Anand declares in his Apology for Heroism that, and I quote, there are 2 different moralities then, the morality of the old order based on the choice of the few, and the morality of the humanity at present consigned to the dirt, squalor, and ignorance of the lower depths, but capable of rising from the living hells in which it is enclosed to the recognition of its role as the vanguard of the democracy of the future, as the inheritor of the past and the creator of a new meaning of right and wrong for the future. Unquote. Are these marginalized, reviled, and extremely poor people actually included or even imagined as constituting a part of the new nation is the next question that should concern us. The novel thus exposes the searing effects of such segregation in as much as imagining a new and united nation is concerned. Baka is presented as an alien figure within the nation whose very touch is considered hateful and defiling. Okay. The animal imagery used with regard to Baka, highlighting his physicality, plays upon the idea that Baka is an amoral victim of the society, which treats him and I quote from Anand, butcher might treat a dog sniffing around his shop, close quotes. Anand makes Baka an expansive hero in a closed world. Anand comments that the tragedy of my hero lay in the fact that he was never allowed to attain anything near the potential of his qualities of manhood. The only person who establishes some connection with Baka is the Muslim Tongawala, another alienated entity, or rather non-entity, in a nation imagined predominantly as upper caste and Hindu. Now I'll move on to my cinematic representation of segregation, which is Lagan itself. The way in which Lagan manipulates Kachra is representative of how mainstream societies and the grand or the meta-narratives of history and nationalisms have dealt with Dalits. It is not as if cricketers have not had deformities. Spinners such as India's own D.S. Chandrasekhar, Australia's John Gleeson, and Sri Lanka's Muthaiya Muralidharan have had deformities. Chandrasekhar was stricken by polio in his childhood, and both Gleeson and Muralidharan apparently suffered from congenitally bent elbows. But what is disturbing in Lagan is the juxtaposition of disability and untouchability. What is of note is that the rest of the villages like Guvan and Laka are constantly referred to as farmers, and hence the Lagan directly affects them. But where does the untouchable or the Dalit figure as represented through the figure of Kachra come into the equation is the question that should concern us. What to the Dalit or the untouchable is the more pertinent problem then? The discrimination that he faces, like all other Indians from the white colonizer state, or the oppression that he continues to suffer due to the caste colonialism practiced and sustained by the Raja and the caste Hindus of the village. In a not so obvious manner then, what Lagan exposes is the hard-hitting fact that irrespective of the result of the game and Kachra's performance in it, the status of the Dalit will remain the same. Guvan's impassioned plea to the village elders is limited to Kachra's inclusion in the team and no more. The Dalit is always on the margins. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anamitra, for finishing your presentation even within 10 minutes time. The next presenter is Chandan Mishra, whose title is Dynamics of Social.
By this paper, I want to tell you the impact of social and political exclusion on human as a part of human society. A golden age means a testimony. Anam, using her family's experiences as inspiration for her debut novel, tells the story of the Indian subcontinent, the other partition, the 9 months war that ended in 1971, separating West and East Pakistan and Bangladesh. Anam, an expatriate Bangladeshi and an anthropologist by training, is a keen, sympathetic witness for her heroine Rehana Haq, a widow living in a middle-class enclave of Dhaka. The objectives of to present this paper is to find out measures to minimize or possibly to eradicate the cause of destitution, to stop bonded labor, starvation, debt. It goes a bit like social more than a literary work. Here when I talk about poverty, hunger, exploitation, etc. But actually, it is directly connected to the topic when we speak exclusion. I look at myself as an individual. I look at you all as one. I mean, each of you as one person, as an individual. And then we see in every aspect the exclusion, psychological, the mental conflict, economical exclusion, excluded in education, so many things, economically, etc. So, it is important to, first of all, it is important to elevate from the narrow conceptions of social exclusion in terms of general caste and economy. Rather, it should render focusing at the actual requirement of the individual and the mass in Indian society. Liberal Indian economy have prevailed social exclusion and inclusion in circulating cycle of poverty, inequality, and hence combines to develop a deeper understanding in complex social procession and the economic policy of contemporary India. To build India a nation of power, first of all, we have to see each individual as proactive